Christmas Eve. A line of military trucks rolled out of the base one after another, carrying troops back toward home for the holidays. Sniper Mara Cade held her leave pass tightly. The first time in 3 years she'd actually be heading home. She pictured Helen's face, the pine scent in their little Red Haven living room, the soft groan of their old wooden stairs. But as she neared the security gate, shrill sirens split the night. A sudden field transmission cut through the static. Echo team trapped deep in a burning valley, surrounded on all sides. No escape. No one else had the skill to punch through those defenses. Mara stopped, Christmas coat still draped over her arm. She turned back toward the direction where death waited for her. The transport manifest had read, Cade approved 72-hour leave for exactly 9 days. Mara had checked it every morning, terrified it would vanish like smoke. 28 years old, 3 straight years deployed without a single break, and she had finally earned this chance. Her duffel sat packed by her bunk, civilian clothes that felt foreign to fold, a wrapped gift for her mother, and a picture of Daniel Cade in his dress blues. Master Sergeant Daniel Cade had died when she was 14. A sudden heart attack. No warning. Gone. Christmas never felt the same afterward. Helen had tried to keep their traditions alive, but that empty chair at the table turned every holiday into a quiet memorial. When Mara enlisted at 18, Helen didn't argue. She knew her daughter needed structure, purpose, something to fill the space her father left behind. "You really heading out, Cade?" Corporal Harlan appeared in her doorway grinning, holding a red knitted scarf. Handmade, crooked, clearly crafted with love. "Miller's grandma made it. Says every soldier needs something warm for Christmas." Mara took it gently, brushing her thumb over the uneven stitching. "Tell her thank you." "We're gonna miss our guardian angel," Harlan murmured, his smile fading. "Nobody shoots like you. That Kandahar op? You saved my life. I never said it then, but—" "You don't have to," she cut in, folding the scarf and placing it on her bag. "Just stay sharp while I'm gone." The base carried that peculiar stillness that settles before a holiday. Fewer trucks moving, softer voices in the mess hall. Even the wind felt gentler, as though acknowledging that tonight warriors deserved rest. Mara headed for the gate, boots crunching on gravel, stiffening with frost. Above her, stars peeked through thinning clouds. She'd missed too many Christmases, staring at those same stars from distant ridges through a rifle scope, waiting for threats that sometimes never came. Her phone buzzed. A message from Helen. "Flight lands at 9:00 a.m. I'll be waiting. I love you, Mara." She was typing her reply when everything changed. The alarm shattered the quiet like broken glass. Deep, urgent tones every soldier recognized instantly. Red lights spun across the command building. Boots pounded as personnel sprinted to their stations. A Blackhawk roared off the rapid response pad, lifting within 45 seconds of the first siren. Mara's fingers tightened around her phone. She knew that sound. Emergency extraction. Someone was in trouble. All senior NCOs and officers to the TOC immediately. The announcement crackled through the speakers. This is not a drill. For 5 seconds, Mara stood caught between two worlds. The gate was 30 yards away. Beyond it, a civilian driver waited to take her to the airfield. Her mother was probably packing Christmas cookies, checking the guest room again, making sure everything was perfect. Then the second announcement crackled through, and her choice solidified. Echo team is dark. Multiple casualties. Position overrun. Immediate QRF required. The rest dissolved into static. Echo team, Lucas Bray's team. Captain Bray had saved her life in Helmand 2 years ago when her spotter took a round to the neck and she was pinned under fire. Bray had pushed his unit 3 clicks under sustained gunfire to reach her. He carried her spotter himself, pressing on the wound while shouting orders, never slowing. The spotter lived. Mara never forgot. She turned away from the gate. The Tactical Operations Center was barely contained chaos. Satellite feeds covered a wall, showing grainy thermal outlines of mountain terrain. Radio operators juggled 3 channels at once. Lieutenant Colonel Adrian Voss stood at the central console, face carved from stone as he studied a projected topographic map. Mara stepped in without knocking. Voss glanced up, noted her presence, and said nothing about the fact she should already have been off base. Echo engaged hostile forces at 1840 hours, Voss said bluntly, as more senior personnel filed in. Special forces, intel officers, the base commander. They were running recon on a suspected weapons cache in Razor Pit Valley, grid November 734. They walked straight into a prepared ambush. We lost comms 18 minutes ago. Last transmission reported 3 wounded, at least 15 hostiles. Enemy holding the high ground with crew-served weapons. He zoomed in. The valley appeared as a thin gash between sheer cliffs, only about 200 meters wide at the bottom and roughly 800 long. A kill box. Terrain's against us, Voss continued. Razor Pit is named for a reason. Walls like knives, single narrow approach, and no air support. The weather front's collapsing ceilings to 300 feet. Snow in under an hour. Major Naya Calder from Intel spoke up. Thermal shows Echo dug in around this rock formation here. She pointed to a cluster of boulders at the valley's eastern edge, explaining that Echo was boxed in and taking fire from every direction. North ridge, south ridge, and a raised position at the western approach. That western perch held a PKM machine gun. Confirmed. They were pinned down and unable to move. Artillery? Someone asked. Too close to Echo's line, Voss replied flatly. Danger close doesn't even cover it, and the weather will ground every rotor we've got in 40 minutes. 1 window, that's it. Send a full platoon, Captain Briggs from Alpha suggested. Overwhelm them. No time to gather and brief that many, Voss answered. This isn't a numbers game, it's precision. Someone needs to take out that PKM first or they'll get cut to pieces, just like Echo. Voss turned his gaze directly to Mara. The hostile gunner was dug behind reinforced cover, ranged to the closest safe firing point, 200 meters. Night conditions, snow falling, wind climbing to 20 knots. The room fell silent. 1,200 meters was a distance only true marksmen handled. Cade, Voss said her name like he already knew the answer. You've made that shot before. Kosovo 2023. 1,400 meters, rain, moving target. You dropped the spotter before he could call artillery on us. Mara felt every stare turn her way. Her leave pass was still in her pocket, edges worn from 9 days of nervous thumb rubbing. Echo has 6 people, Voss continued. Captain Bray, 3 Special Operations troops, 1 medic, 1 Air Force JTAC. They've got families waiting too. He wasn't guilt-tripping her. Voss didn't lead like that. He was just laying out the math and trusting her to see it clearly. Mara thought of her father, Daniel Cade, a Marine. She had read his old deployment journal cover to cover after he died. One line never left her. I don't fight because I hate what's ahead. I fight because I love what's behind me. And sometimes love means sacrifice. She met Voss's eyes. If you were Echo, what would you want my father to do? Your father, Voss answered quietly, would already be suiting up. Mara stepped closer to the console, studying the terrain display. I need 4 people, demolitions for breach and IED clearing, a medic, a scout with NV and drone capability. And you, sir. Someone has to coordinate extraction once we bring them out. You'll lead the mission. I'll take the shot that matters. Voss nodded. Assemble your team. Wheels up in 20. Mara pulled out her phone, opened her half-typed message to Helen, stared at it, deleted it, and wrote, Mom, I'm sorry. I need to stay a little longer. I love you. I'll explain everything when I get home. Merry Christmas. She set her leave pass on Voss's desk and walked out. The armory smelled of gun oil and cold metal. Mara moved through it with practiced calm, selecting what she needed. First was the M210 enhanced sniper rifle. Bolt action, 300 Winchester Magnum, effective far beyond what tonight required. She checked the action 3 times, peered down the barrel, inspecting the rifling under harsh fluorescent light. Next came the Scope's 29 clip-on night vision optic with thermal overlay. She calibrated it against known distance plates on the rangeboard, adjusting for humidity and temperature. Her gloves were thin enough for trigger feel, yet insulated enough to keep her fingers alive. After Alaska, she never forgot that frozen hand's missed shots. The red scarf Harlan had given her lay on the bench. Mara picked it up, studied it, then cut off the tassels. They'd snag on gear. She kept a small square of fabric tucked into her plate carrier, a reminder of why she fought. Rapid 6 assembled, a voice called. She turned. 3 soldiers waited at attention. Staff Sergeant Owen Reddick, Demolitions, 34, Montana-born, certified in every explosive device America owned, and half it didn't. Calm, meticulous, steady as bedrock. Captain Layla Serrano, combat medic, 29, former ER nurse from Houston, who joined after losing her brother in Afghanistan. She'd saved more lives in 4 years than most medics saw in 20. Sergeant First Class Cole Navarro, scout and drone operator, 26, New Mexico native who read terrain the way others read newspapers. If there was a hidden path or a tactical angle, Navarro found it. We're Oscar Mike in 15, Mara told them. Razor Pit's a grinder. Enemies got height, prepared sights, and weather on their side. We get in, drop the machine gun, pull Echo out, and get gone. Questions? Rules of engagement? Navarro asked. Anyone aiming at us or Echo is done. Everyone else avoid if possible. This is rescue, not payback. Speed and precision. Reddick lifted a breaching charge. Southern Routes mined. You clear it, Mara said. That's why you're here. Serrano checked her pack. Echo said 3 wounded before blackout. Expect worse. Voss entered with a tablet. Weather's diving faster than predicted. 35 minutes of flying time, maybe 40. After that, no air until dawn. Then we move, Mara said, slinging her rifle. The MH-60 waited on the pad, rotors already turning. They climbed aboard, Mara taking her place beside the open door. As the aircraft lifted, she watched the base shrink, lights fading from bright to dim to distant. Reddick leaned close through the rotor thunder. You were supposed to be on leave. Yeah. Your mom know you're not coming? Yeah, he sighed. My wife's gonna be furious. 3rd Christmas in a row. But she gets it. She was Army too. Some things you don't walk away from. The helicopter banked hard toward the mountains. Snow streaked past the windows, flakes catching faint instrument light as the storm gathered strength. Mara checked her rifle again, then settled in, steadying her breath, preparing for the shot she already knew she'd have to make. Mara checked her rifle one last time, then leaned back and shut her eyes, running the shot through her mind. Wind drift, elevation, breathing rhythm. The core fundamentals never changed. 20 minutes. Later, the pilot's voice snapped through their headsets. 2 minutes to LZ, winds getting rough. Mara opened her eyes. Beneath them, the mountains rose like jagged teeth, buried in snow and dangerously steep. Somewhere down there, 6 soldiers were hanging on by a thread. "Rapid 6 on me," she said into her radio. "We're bringing them home." The helicopter couldn't land. The terrain was broken and the storm too violent. They fast-roped into a small clearing half a click from the valley mouth, dropping through swirling snow into pitch darkness. As soon as Mara's boots hit earth, she dropped to a knee, rifle up, scanning her sector. The others landed in sequence, forming a defensive perimeter without a word. "Moving," she murmured, and they slipped into formation. The approach to Razor Pit was every bit as hostile as Intel predicted. The ground sloped upward, covered in loose scree that shifted underfoot, threatening to trigger rock slides with each step. Visibility dipped to maybe 60 meters in the thick snow. They advanced slowly and deliberately, Cole Navarro leading with NV gear, picking the safest line forward. 15 minutes in, Navarro raised a closed fist. Everyone froze. He crouched, examined the ground, and brushed away a thin layer of snow, revealing a nearly invisible wire. "Tripwire," he whispered over comms. "Probably tied to a mine or IED. They seeded the whole path." Owen Reddick moved up, tools ready. He tracked the wire with his eyes and fingertips until he found the source. A PMN-2 anti-personnel mine. Old Soviet design, but still lethal. He disabled the trigger in silence, then lifted it aside. "Clear," he breathed, "but there'll be more." And there were. 2 more mines in the next 100 meters. Each time, Reddick disarmed them while the rest of the team guarded the perimeter. Progress crawled forward, each second bleeding away from their shrinking extraction window. Mara swept the ridgelines through her scope, searching for movement. The thermal overlay revealed several heat signatures on the northern ridge. 4, maybe 5 enemy fighters, still patient, confident in their vantage point. Then, through the falling snow, she heard it. The sharp crack, crack, crack of AK fire echoing down the valley, followed by the heavier, relentless thumping of a PKM machine gun. Echo was still in the fight. "They're alive," Layla Serrano said, relief threading through her voice. "For now," Voss replied grimly over the tactical net. "Ammo's low, and one of their wounded is circling the drain. We need to move." Navarro pointed ahead. 200 meters to the valley entrance. After that, it closes up. Perfect kill zone. Mara studied the landscape through her scope. She caught the muzzle flashes from the machine gun nest on the western ridge, exactly where Intel placed it, 1,200 meters out, maybe more. The gunner fired controlled, disciplined bursts, and then something on the ground caught her eye. A piece of spent brass gleamed faintly atop a rock. The shape sent a chill through her. She signaled Navarro to retrieve it. He crawled forward, snatched it, and returned. Silver-tipped, custom-made. She'd seen this ammunition before in a classified briefing on high-value enemy shooters. "Oh no," she muttered. "What?" Voss asked. "This is Phantom's work." The radio went dead quiet. Phantom, a name whispered across special operations circles. Not because he was the deadliest, though he was close, but because he made things personal. He studied targets, learned their habits, and hunted them on their own terms. Mara had crossed paths with him once during an off-book Balkans op. She'd provided overwatch for a raid while Phantom covered the defenders. They dueled for 6 hours across a valley, each trying to outthink the other. She'd barely won with a shot that came straight from instinct. She'd watched his silhouette drop and assumed he died, or at least was incapacitated. He hadn't, and now he was here. "This isn't random," Mara said, pulling the team close. "Echo walked into a trap." "For them?" Layla asked. Mara shook her head. "No. For whoever came to pull them out. For me." "You think he knew you'd show?" "He knew someone good would. The silver rounds are his signature. He wants me to know he's here." Voss crackled through. "Does this change the mission?" Mara glanced toward the valley. Echo still under fire. Ammo dwindling. One soldier dying by inches. She thought of Bray, of Harlan, of every soldier who trusted her. "No, sir. Mission stands. We get Echo out. But now I know exactly what I'm dealing with." Reddick checked his watch. 25 minutes before the extraction window shuts. "Then we push," Mara said. "Navarro, fastest safe path. Now." They entered Razor Pit proper. The walls surged upward into 100-meter cliffs, funneling the wind into a screaming tunnel. Snow blasted sideways, dropping visibility to 30 meters. Mara's face burned from the cold even under her balaclava. Gunfire grew louder. Distinct M4 bursts from Echo's position, answering AK shots from the ridges, and overpowering everything. The continuous roar of the PKM raking the valley floor. "Contact front," Navarro hissed. Navarro hissed a warning. 3 enemy fighters slipped out from behind a pile of boulders, trying to flank Echo's position. They hadn't spotted Rapid 6 yet. Mara dropped the first with a clean chest shot at 700 meters. Reddick tagged the second with his suppressed M4. The third scrambled for cover, yelled a warning, then made the mistake of sticking his head up. Mara's follow-up round ended him instantly. "Echo, this is Rapid 6, Voss transmitted. "We're in the valley and moving toward you. Acknowledge." Static crackled. Then, "Rapid 6, Echo Actual, we are..." Gunfire drowned the rest. 1 KIA, 3 wounded, 1 critical. "We're almost Winchester on ammo. Enemy strength 12 to 15. Concentrated on the North Ridge and the western PKM nest. Their shooter is exceptional. Lost our JTAC to a headshot at 800 meters in this storm. 800 meters in heavy snow wasn't luck. That was talent." "Copy, Echo," Mara responded. "Conserve ammo. We'll take the PKM. ETA 10 mics." "Understood. Echo out." Mara slid behind a tilted slab of rock, giving her a clean view up the valley. She deployed her bipod, settled into prone, and started her breathing cycle. Slow inhale, slow exhale, heart rate falling. Her world narrowed to what she saw through the scope. The thermal overlay showed Echo's cluster. 5 figures packed into a hollow between boulders. One motionless, another barely moving. Enemy silhouettes dotted the North Ridge, popping up in turns to fire. And on the western ridge, the PKM nest, but no sign of Phantom. He'd be hidden somewhere, perfectly concealed, waiting for her to slip. "Reddick, Serrano, Navarro, you 3 push to Echo under my cover," Mara ordered. "I'm going hunting." "Negative," Voss snapped. "We don't split the team." "Sir, that PKM has to go down or we all die here. And Phantom won't shoot at anyone except me. He wants this personal. I'll give him his fight, but on my terms." Silence followed. Then Voss said, "You have 15 minutes. If you're not back, we extract without you." "Roger." Mara cut comms, turned, and began climbing. Razor Pit's western wall wasn't fully vertical. Cracks, ledges, and jagged rockfalls formed something like steps if you were desperate enough to try them. Mara climbed deliberately, testing every grip before committing her weight. Her rifle threw off her balance. Snow collected inside her gloves. At 50 feet she paused, shook out her hands, forcing feeling back into her fingers. Below she heard the sharp crack of M4 fire as Reddick, Serrano, and Navarro advanced toward Echo. The PKM ripped to life immediately, tracers buzzing like angry hornets. But her team moved smart, bounding from cover to cover. Good. She climbed higher. At 100 feet, the wind slashed against her, clawing at her body as if trying to tear her from the cliff. Her breathing grew heavier from the effort and altitude, and the knowledge that one slip meant death. At 150 feet, she found it, a ledge just big enough to lie prone, with a perfect view down into the valley. More importantly, it gave her a line of sight directly to the PKM nest. She could see the gunner clearly now through her scope. A big man, methodical, firing in short, controlled bursts to conserve ammo while keeping Echo pinned. Range, 1,247 meters. Wind, northeast, gusting 18 to 23 knots. Temp, 22 degrees and dropping. Elevation change, 157 feet. Angle, 6.7 degrees. She began dialing in her corrections. At this distance, gravity would drag the round nearly 6 feet low. Wind would shove it 18 inches right. Cold air thickening the lift slightly. She logged every variable, made her adjustments, then settled in, waiting for the perfect break. Something felt wrong. Her instincts, sharpened by countless missions, screamed danger. She was exposed here, a predictable spot Phantom would anticipate. She rolled left just as a bullet obliterated the rock where her head had been. Stone shards sliced her cheek. She dove behind a boulder, pulse pounding. Across the valley, barely visible through the swirling snow, a muzzle flash blinked. Phantom had been waiting. Of course he had. He knew she'd climb. He knew she'd seek elevation. He'd watched her, patient, letting her settle before taking the shot. "You've improved," she muttered, "or I've gotten predictable." Her radio crackled. "Cade, report." "I'm good. Engaged by hostile sniper. Repositioning." She couldn't stay. Phantom had her pinned, but moving meant exposing herself, and the PKM was still ripping into Echo's cover. She could hear Serrano yelling for a medic bag. Someone had been hit. Decision time. Mara did the one thing Phantom wouldn't expect. She stood up fully exposed and fired 3 quick shots toward his ridge. Not to hit him, but to force him down, break his visual on her. Then she jumped. Not downward. That would kill her. She leapt sideways to a lower ledge 15 feet away. For one terrifying second she was airborne, wind ripping at her, rifle swinging wildly. She crashed onto the ledge hard, rolled and dragged herself behind cover. 2 more rounds slammed into her old perch. He was fast. She had to admit that. But now she had a different angle, and more importantly, a clean view of his firing nest. For a brief moment, as he shifted to track her last movement, she caught his thermal outline, the contour of his rifle, the faint shape of his improvised hide. She recalculated quickly, adjusting for the new distance, 1,180 meters, and the cross-valley wind she felt ripping through the gap. This was the real shot, not the PKM gunner. Phantom came first. Without him, the machine gunner was just another predictable target. Through her scope, she watched him settle back in, convinced he'd forced her into cover, assuming he had a moment to relocate or fortify his hide. He assumed wrong. Mara's finger pressed lightly into the trigger wall. She exhaled halfway, held it, let her pulse slip into silence. Time seemed to slow around her. She squeezed, The rifle's recoil was solid, familiar, grounding. Through her optic, she watched the faint distortion trail across the freezing air, a barely visible shimmer, even with high-grade thermals. For 1.8 seconds, the world waited. Then Phantom jerked back, clutching his left shoulder. Hit, but not fatal. The angle had been slightly off, or the wind had twitched at the wrong second, or she'd misread by a single fraction. At this range, microscopic errors turned into feet, and a wounded Phantom was still a lethal threat. He vanished behind cover instantly, moving with a practiced speed that ignored pain. Mara tracked the direction he'd fled, anticipating his next perch. Her radio crackled. "Cade, Echo is taking heavy casualties. We need that gun down now." She'd let the duel drag her focus off the PKM, exactly what Phantom intended. His job was distraction. His partner's job was slaughter. Tactical choice, split focus or commit. She committed. She snapped her rifle to the western nest. The gunner was reloading, shoving a fresh belt into the PKM. Range, 1,247 meters, already dialed. She squeezed. The gunner pitched forward over the weapon, dead before he knew he'd been shot. "Machine gun neutralized," she reported. Below, Reddick and Navarro surged toward Echo under suppressing fire from Serrano. They reached the trapped team within seconds, starting evacuation and a fighting withdrawal. But Mara's fight wasn't done. Another round sliced past her so close she felt the snap of displaced air. Phantom had repositioned, firing one-handed, compensating for a wrecked shoulder with raw skill. His shots were sloppier now, but at this range even sloppy could kill. She scrambled sideways along the cliff, keeping low. Her boot skidded on an ice-slick rock, and for a heart-stopping instant, she slid toward the edge. Her hand shot out, snagging a jagged outcrop. She hauled herself back, lungs burning, focus. No room for fear, only physics and angles. She found another perch 30 feet along the ridge. Better cover, worse shooting lane. Trade-offs. Through her scope, she searched for Phantom. Nothing. He'd masked his thermal signature. Emergency blanket, cold rocks, some trick he knew. Smart. Very smart. But no sniper stays still forever. Eventually, everyone moves. She waited. Below, she heard Echo's extraction in motion. Voss was coordinating with the pilots, pushing the limits of what the blizzard would allow. They had maybe 10 minutes before flying became suicide. "Rapid 6 to Cade," Voss transmitted. "We have Echo. 5 souls, 1 critical, moving to Hotel 3. Status?" "Still engaged with hostile sniper. Don't wait for me." "Get them out, Cade. That's an order." "Echo comes first, sir." And she meant it. 6 lives outweighed 1. A flicker of movement caught her eye. Phantom shifting, lining up on the evacuation route. He wasn't trying to kill her now. He was going to cut down Echo as they moved. Not happening. Mara saw him for maybe 2 seconds. That was all she'd get. He had partial cover, only his head and shoulder visible. Range, 1,095 meters, steep angle. Wind spiking to 25 knots, almost full cross valley. This was an impossible shot by any standard. Too small a target, too violent a wind, too complex an angle. Sniper school would call it a waste of a round. But she'd made impossible shots before. She didn't aim at him. Too small, too easy to miss. She aimed for the rock 6 inches to his right, calculating that the wind would shove the bullet sideways into him. Backwards logic, counterintuitive, exactly the kind of thinking Phantom wouldn't anticipate. She fired. Through her scope, she saw the impact land not where she aimed, but exactly where she intended. Phantom jerked, then toppled out of sight. Target down, she said calmly, though her pulse hammered. She didn't know if he was dead or wounded again, and she didn't have time to find out. The helicopter was inbound, rotors chopping through the storm. Mara began her descent, half climbing, half sliding in a barely controlled fall. Her hands were numb, cheek burning from stone fragments, adrenaline doing the rest. She hit the valley floor running, sprinting toward the extraction point where Rapid 6 and Echo had formed a defensive ring. The Black Hawk slammed in hard, flaring just enough to avoid a crash. "Go, go, go!" Voss shouted. They loaded the wounded first. Bray was among them, unconscious, bleeding from multiple gunshot wounds. Serrano worked on him even as they lifted him aboard. Then the rest of Echo, then Rapid 6. Mara was last. As she climbed in, she glanced back at the ridge, back at where Phantom had been. A figure stood there, silhouetted in the storm. One arm hung limp, but he was alive, and he was watching her. She held his gaze across the void, knowing he understood. Respect between hunters. This round belonged to her, but there would be others. The Black Hawk yanked upward, banking hard to clear the cliffs. Gunfire erupted from the ridges, wild and angry, chasing them. But the pilots were good, and within seconds the valley dropped away behind them as they punched toward home. The flight back to base lasted 23 minutes. Serrano never stopped working on Bray, pushing CPR when his pulse stuttered, forcing air into his lungs when his breathing failed. Mara supported her, moving to Serrano's rhythm, pressing Bray's chest in steady, metronomic compressions. "Come on, Captain," Serrano whispered, refusing to quit. "Not after everything we did to reach you." At minute 17, Bray gasped. His eyes flickered open for a second, dazed and lost, then shut again. "Pulse is back," Serrano breathed in relief. "Faint but steady. He's got a shot." The rest of Echo were in better shape, one with a through-and-through leg wound, another torn up by shrapnel, the others battered but alive. The one who hadn't made it was Sergeant James Torres, the JTAC, killed instantly by Phantom's long-range headshot. His body lay wrapped in a poncho liner, secured in the cargo bay with an American flag patch placed gently over his chest. 24 years old. One of the Echo operators leaned toward Mara. He had 3 months left. Job lined up, girlfriend waiting, planned to propose on Christmas. Mara only nodded, unable to trust her voice. This was the cost. It was always the cost. The base rose ahead, lights blazing through the dark. Ambulances and medical teams waited on the tarmac, ready to receive the wounded. When the helicopter touched down, chaos took over, controlled, urgent, practiced. Medics rushed Bray and the others toward the field hospital. Mara climbed out last. Her legs shook as adrenaline faded. Reddick caught her arm. "Easy, Sergeant. You're bleeding." She touched her cheek, feeling the shallow cut from shattered stone. "It's nothing." "Let them look anyway." Before medics reached her, base personnel began gathering. Soldiers streamed from buildings, forming 2 silent rows from the helicopter to the command entrance. As Mara walked between them, they snapped to attention. Not ceremonial stiffness, but something deeper, something earned. Voss waited at the end. When she reached him, he saluted, not to rank, but to her actions. "Your mother called," he said quietly. "I told her you were delayed but safe. She said she's proud and waiting for you." Something inside Mara buckled. Not pain, not fear, but everything she'd held back. Torres wouldn't go home. Bray barely held on. She swallowed hard. "Permission to—" Her voice cracked. She tried again. "Permission to take a few minutes, sir." "Granted," Voss said gently. "And Cade, Merry Christmas. You saved 6 lives tonight." "7," she murmured. "Bray coded twice on the flight. Serrano brought him back." Voss nodded once. "Then Merry Christmas to you both." Mara slipped into an empty office in the operations building and sat in the dark, breathing, letting the weight settle. Eventually, Serrano appeared with a cup of coffee, sat beside her, and said nothing. She didn't need to. Around 300, Mara's phone buzzed. A message from her mother. "I know you can't tell me what happened, but I know my daughter. Whoever lived tonight lived because of you. Come home when you can. I'll be here. I love you." Mara typed back. "I love you too, Mom. I'll be there soon, promise." And for the first time, she meant every word. Dawn crept over the base slowly, a faint wash of pale light stretching across the tarmac like cautious hope. Mara stood under the shower for 30 minutes, letting hot water peel away blood, sweat, and debris. Her hands trembled. Delayed stress response. Normal. Manageable. She repeated that to herself until she believed it. By 0700, she was in the hospital wing checking on Echo. Bray was in surgery, surgeons cautiously optimistic. The others were stable. Torres had been moved to the morgue, where mortuary affairs would prepare him for his last journey home. "Sergeant Cade?" A private approached her nervously. "Colonel Voss requests your presence at 0800. Mara checked her watch. 40 minutes. Enough time for breakfast. She realized she hadn't eaten in 12 hours. The dining facility was nearly empty. She took scrambled eggs and toast, just fuel, and ate automatically, mind drifting back to Razor Pit, to Phantom falling behind the rocks. At 0800 sharp, she entered Voss's office. He wasn't alone. Colonel Warren, Major Chen, and a civilian stood inside. Mara recognized neither the man nor his demeanor, CIA or DIA by the look of him. "At ease, Sergeant," Warren said, gesturing to a chair. "Sit. You've earned it." Mara did, posture straight, hands resting on her knees. Warren spoke first. "What you accomplished last night was exceptional. You were supposed to be on leave. Conditions were terrible. Yet you led a team into hostile territory, neutralized a superior enemy element, and extracted 6 soldiers who would have died. Captain Bray is alive because of you. Do you understand the weight of that?" "I understand Sergeant Torres isn't alive, ma'am." Warren softened. "No, he isn't. And that's tragic. But his death occurred before your team even arrived. You can't save everyone. You can only do your best with the hand you're dealt." The civilian cleared his throat. "I'm Mr. Carilli, Defense Intelligence. I need to discuss Phantom." Mara's focus sharpened. "I thought he died after the Balkans operation." "So did we," Carilli said. "Apparently not. Can you confirm your engagement with him last night?" Mara described everything. The silver-tipped rounds, the way he predicted her movements, the hits she'd scored, the final moment she'd seen him standing on the ridge, watching. Carilli took notes. "And you're certain he survived?" "I saw him upright. Hurt, yes. Alive, definitely." Carilli exhaled. "That's problematic. Phantom has disrupted at least a dozen operations. We'd very much like to apprehend him." "Good luck," Mara replied quietly. "He's a ghost." "Maybe. But you've engaged him twice and survived. That makes you an asset." Carilli looked to Warren. "We may request your support in future operations involving him." "I'm a sniper," Mara said, "not a hunter." "Sometimes that's the same thing," Voss noted. "But that's for another time. Sergeant Cade has been on duty 18 hours straight. She needs rest. Warren nodded. Agreed. Sergeant Cade, you're hereby ordered to take 72 hours of leave. Mandatory. Effective immediately. We'll handle the after-action reports when you're back. Go home. See your mother. That's an order too. Mara stood, saluted, and left the office. In the hallway, she found Reddick, Serrano, and Navarro waiting. Heading out? Reddick asked. Yeah. We're stuck here for the holidays, Navarro said. But we wanted to thank you for leading that op and getting every one of us out. You're solid, Cade. Serrano handed her a small package wrapped in newspaper, improvised Christmas wrapping. Open it when you get home. You didn't have to. Just take it. Mara tucked the gift under her arm. Merry Christmas, guys. Stay safe. You too, guardian angel. The flight home was delayed twice, first for weather, then a mechanical fault. Mara finally boarded a civilian charter at 1400 hours, wedged into a middle seat between a contractor reading Tom Clancy and a young lieutenant, passed out under the weight of a brutal hangover. She didn't sleep. She stared out the window, watching clouds drift below, her mind quiet for the first time in days. Serrano's package rested unopened on her lap. They landed at 18:30 Christmas evening. Families everywhere were finishing dinner, watching movies, sharing presents. Mara collected her duffel, walked through the terminal, and there she was. Helen Cade stood near the windows, silver hair tied back, wearing the same blue cardigan she'd owned for 15 years. The moment she saw Mara, her face shifted, relief, joy, love all at once. They met halfway. Helen felt smaller than Mara remembered. Or maybe Mara felt older than she'd been. They held each other without speaking. Finally, Helen pulled back, hands on Mara's shoulders. You're hurt. The bandage on Mara's cheek was still visible. It's nothing, Mom. It's never nothing. Helen touched it gently. But you're here. That's what matters. The drive home took 45 minutes. Helen filled the car with small stories. Neighbors, choir practice, her book club drama. Life-affirming noise. Their house looked exactly as Mara remembered. A small ranch-style home with Christmas lights along the gutters and a wreath on the door. Inside, everything was familiar. The worn couch, the cinnamon and pine smell, the mantel photos. A small Christmas tree glowed in the corner, decorated with ornaments Mara had made as a kid. A handful of presents waited underneath. I kept dinner warm, Helen said. We can still have Christmas. They ate ham, roasted vegetables, soft rolls. Helen asked no questions about the mission. She'd learned long ago not to ask. Instead, they talked about gardens, a new coffee shop downtown, and a ridiculous story about the neighbor's escaped parrot. After dinner, they exchanged gifts. Helen gave Mara a new winter coat. Warm, durable, perfect. Mara gave her the photo album she'd built for months. Sunsets, mountains, quiet landscapes from deployments. So you remember I see beautiful things too, Mara said. Not just... She couldn't finish. Helen squeezed her hand. I never doubted that, sweetheart. Then Mara opened Serrano's package. Inside was the red scarf from Harlan, or what remained of it. Serrano had taken the scraps Mara cut away and stitched them into a small pillow embroidered with Guardian Angel. Echo Team. Mara held it, and the tears she'd been forcing down finally broke. Helen wrapped an arm around her and let her cry. I couldn't save them all, Mara whispered. Torres is dead. Bray might still die. Phantom's still out there. But 6 men came home because of you, Helen said firmly. That's not nothing. That's everything. They sat together until the tears ran dry. Then Helen made real hot chocolate, the kind with melted chocolate and whole milk, exactly as she had when Mara was small. They drank it by the tree, lights flickering across the room. Around midnight, Helen went to bed. Mara stayed up in her father's old chair, staring at his photo on the wall. Master Sergeant Daniel Cade, proud in his dress blues. "I did what you would have done," she whispered. "I hope that was enough." Morning brought messages from Voss. Bray had survived surgery. Prognosis good. Torres's family had been notified. Funeral scheduled next week. Intel confirmed Phantom escaped the valley. Location unknown. But tonight, Mara was just a daughter. Home, safe, loved. Outside, snow drifted softly across the world. 3 days later, Mara returned to base. On the mission board, someone had left a handwritten note. Some heroes save Christmas not by coming home, but by making sure others can. Below it, 6 signatures. Echo Team, alive and recovering. Mara let it stay, a reminder of the choice she made, the cost she paid, and why it mattered. And in a hospital bed across base, Captain Bray opened his eyes for the first time since surgery, saw Mara standing beside him, and breathed, "Thank you for coming back." "Always," she answered.